So our first question was, can you describe your time during the Marines and how you developed cultural bonds and how you carried that throughout your professional career?
Yeah, I was very lucky actually. I grew up in Indianapolis, probably not from the wealthiest of families, a little bit on the poor side, but I was able to get good schooling, able to get good education down at IU, and then I joined the Marine Corps out of the blue, which is weird considering where I came from. But it proved to be very beneficial to me. My first trip in the Marines overseas was in Okinawa, and I actually wound up going to Okinawa twice. And you realize there's a whole different thing going on here. They see life a little bit differently than we do in America. Uh, I mean, I was always kind of interested, but now here I was experiencing it, and I was able to, after 23 years of Marine, spend so much time in the Middle East, in Latin America, in Europe. My last duty station was Stuttgart, Germany. Certainly in Asia too. I even took my wife over in Asia one time on one of those duty stations over there, and we traveled quite a bit through Asia. So it was wonderful to see, and you do realize it's people live differently. There's the similarities are overwhelming, but also the differences are pretty distinct in how they live their day-to-day lives, and you come to appreciate that. And you appreciate the fact that they love their country like we love our country, and they like their way of life like we like our way of life, and so we that becomes very important. And it wasn't lost on me that I got to say this sincerely, and a lot of stuff what I did as the mayor was a piece of this was that I was in uniform. I was in American uniform over there, and the less we want all militaries around the world to be used much less. And if we understand each other around the world a little bit more and have those relationships built, then there's a less chance of us having to use the military. And that's really was when I became the mayor, that was always in the back of my mind and why I did what I did, because ultimately we want everybody around the world to be able to live their best life, if at all possible, without any conflict, without any worry about anybody else coming in and making their life miserable. And that was a big piece of it. And when you travel around the world and you talk to everybody, and as you find out pretty quickly, pretty much everybody is really happy to see Americans. I mean, they really are. I mean, they like what we have stood for in the past. I hope that continues into the future. But people all around the world were extremely welcoming to us. Some exceptions, but generally speaking, it was pretty clear how they felt about America being really the moral force for good in the world, and I want that to continue as much as possible.
So we wanted to ask, what are key facts you wish for students to know about the multicultural and global dimensions of our local, regional, and national economy?
Yeah, one of the reasons I doubled the number of sister cities was because this is a global economy, and some people don't want to understand it. And frankly, I'm afraid that we're going through a period right now in the country where it's okay to say America first for some people, not for me, but it is for some people. But when you say that, you're kind of saying to the exclusion of everybody else, and I want to be careful that we don't do that, because it's important that we maintain relationships. And what I wanted to do in Indianapolis was to send a signal that this is a global economy. One of the great successes, I think, was Infosys coming to Indianapolis. The relationship with Infosys, that huge Indian IT company, they come to America and they come to Indianapolis first. Well, that all started when my wife and I planted a tree on the Hyderabad campus of Infosys in 2013. There was no relationship before that, and those things are important to remember. We started with China. We started with China, obviously, because our city had no relationships with three of the largest burgeoning economies in the world: China, India, and Brazil. And I thought, well, we have to change that. We also didn't have a relationship with, where so much of the country was formed, which was England. So we started that also. We did it on an economic basis, generally speaking. I could explore that with you if you want me to, but generally speaking, we wanted to make sure that those cities fit Indianapolis economically, but also it was important to do it culturally, because we have lots of individuals in our area in central Indiana that come from those countries. And, I started the Chinese festival. I started the Indian festival. I started so many of those different things. And we want to make sure that we continue to embrace those those folks who have come across the world to live in our city. And so there's so much of what we wanted to do, but I wanted Indianapolis and Indiana to know this is a global economy. We all need to get along. We all need to talk to each other. And I think that was really what the motivation behind what I was doing.
Thank you.
What role do you think sister cities in Indianapolis will play in the future? I know we were just talking about globalization, and that's a really big factor, but also as technology advances.
Yeah, I think the opportunities are very, very strong. The Indian relationship remains very strong to this day. The German relationship remains very strong to this day. The Chinese is pretty strong also, even though I've left, and maybe there's a little bit less emphasis on the sister cities than I had, and ours was really, really, really strong. But I think it's important to maintain those relationships because you never know where it's going to go. I would suggest to you that the state of Indiana kind of hopped on to what we were doing and understood what our administration was trying to do is to create these relationships around the world. And they never went to India until I went to India, right? So, I could give you other examples of that, but I just think it's important for students to realize that this is a big world out there. I mean, you don't know where you're going to wind up. When I was your age, I had no idea where I came from. I was going to wind up being able to travel the world as much as I did, learn about so many people around the world, and then become the mayor of Indianapolis. I mean, that wasn't even close to being on my radar screen. So you never really know where it's all going to go. But I think you're blessed, you're fortunate that you have this understanding now. And I think you could probably make more of an impact into the future than I ever could because you know how important it is at where you are right now. And certainly I never did. But students like you just have to continue to tell your other students who might have more less of an interest around the world that this is important. I mean, you have to put it in their mind that this is important because ultimately we want everybody to live their life as best as possible in a peaceful situation, in a thriving situation, if at all possible, because that's really what we're all trying to do.
Angel and I actually attended your summit last year at UIndy,
Oh, good.
And we heard you talk about how you never thought you would have became mayor, and how that was sort of a journey for you. But another question that we have: what experiences did you have as a student or adult that inspired your interest in other people, cultures, and countries? Which do you recommend for students?
Yeah, as a student, I really didn't have anything, and I'm old enough to be able to. Quite frankly, I'm not sure many people in my generation at your age even thought about that sort of thing, and that's why I'm so happy that you are, and your fellow students are doing this because I think it's important to get that message out. But certainly, as an adult, when I joined the Marines and was able to travel around the world at the level that I was able to, it really hit home to me how important it was that we talk to each other, that we understand each other. And I cannot emphasize that enough, because if we understand each other, then the chances of us coming into conflict with each other later on are much, much less. And I've been in those sorts of situations also. I was in the Gulf War back in 1991, a little bit of Panama action too in 89. So when I understand that, and those are never pleasant situations to be in. We'll have a lot less of that if more people understand that it's okay to talk to other people. It's okay to trade with other countries. It's okay to have relationships in sister cities. It's okay to travel. That doesn't mean you don't love America. It just means that there are other people in the world, that we need to acknowledge that. And so I got that pretty clearly when I was in the Marine Corps. I was blessed in that way that I was able to see so much of the world and to get out and talk to people. We weren't shy about getting out and talking to people and trying to understand them as much as possible. So that's what we really try to do. So the more you can do it now, when the two of you go on to college, and hopefully you'll travel a lot in college and see that some of the students I mentor at UIndy travel quite a bit and pretty well versed in what's happening around the world. And so I see that as a positive. And I think as students, if you can do, the more you can do that as students, I think that'd be great.
Just a few months ago, we had our first international exchange with Taipei, Taiwan, where
Oh, good.
led a group of a dozen students to go over there. So we hope to keep that relationship continuing.
That's that's the oldest sister city. Mayor Hednut started that, I think, in 78. Does that sound right?
Yeah.
Something like that. Yeah, I actually visited every sister city. I think I'm sure I was the only mayor to visit every sister city, and I had doubled them. You remember, from 4 to 8. And I doubt that any mayor would ever visit them all again. But I wanted to make a point of visiting all of them. Taipei was really actually a lot of fun to visit, and so I can tell you, but a lot of people don't know that when Taiwan split off from China, when Chiang Kai-shek took his forces over to Taiwan from China, that so many of the historical artifacts from China are actually in the Taipei National Museum. It's fascinating. I think probably the majority of them are actually in Taipei. They're not actually in China, and so it's that was a fascinating part of it. But Taipei, as you know, is an unbelievably modern city. It really is.
Definitely.
It really is.
What are different ways that students can start to educate themselves about the world around them? I know a lot of students don't have the opportunity to do travel abroad, but what are ways that you think high schoolers right now could educate themselves?
Yeah, that's a great point. I mean, some people can't travel, but certainly study is a big part of it. You can learn a lot by studying. I read voraciously when I was your age, and I think there's a lot of opportunity to do that all the time. The other part is to attend and join the sister city committees, or at least attend some of their meetings. Go to the festivals. The Indian Festival is in August every year, celebrating the independence of India from Britain in 1947. That's on the circle every August, and that's a lot of fun to do. The Chinese festivals are pretty prominent, and I think if you get to a lot of those events, I think you'll get a real appreciation for people who are here living in Indianapolis or Central Indiana, but still have ties to their homeland and still appreciate where they came from. Yet they choose to live here, and I think that dynamic is pretty important to understand. So if you can get out there and talk to those folks, I'm sure the sister city committees would love to entertain you. Some of them are very, very strong, some not so strong. But it was I'm still the chair of the Indiana India Business Council here in the state of Indiana, so I still have relationships with a lot of Indian folks in the area, and so it's been good for me. And I think you have the opportunity to with a phone call or an email, I think you could probably connect with quite a few people to understand more about the world, so that when you do get the opportunity to travel, you'll have a pretty good, strong understanding of it all.